Du glaubst, dass ich fleißig gewesen bin, dass ich gearbeitet habe.
What if history's darkest secrets were hiding right beneath our feet? For decades, historians believed they knew everything about Adolf Hitler's final days. How he committed suicide in his Berlin bunker as Soviet forces closed in. But what if the most chilling chapter of the Nazi story remained buried? Until now. This is shocking, as FBI agents investigating a remote property in the mountains of Argentina have uncovered what appears to be one of the most significant historical discoveries of the century. A sprawling underground complex bearing all the hallmarks of Nazi engineering. But what they found inside left even these hardened federal agents pale with horror. What terrifying secrets has this hidden bunker kept for over 75 years? Let's explore the disturbing truth behind what may be Hitler's final hideout. The mysterious property. Deep in the remote Patagonian mountains of Argentina, a sprawling estate known locally as Estancia Inalco had long been the subject of whispered rumors. Purchased in 1943 by a German businessman with suspected Nazi connections, the property's remote location made it perfect for hiding something, or someone, of great importance. What made FBI investigators particularly interested in this location was its similarity to other properties in Argentina connected to Nazi fugitives. Following World War II, thousands of Nazi officials and collaborators fled to South America through what became known as rat lines, secret escape routes organized by Nazi sympathizers. This region of Argentina became a haven for Nazi war criminals, explains historian Dr. Elena Ramirez. The local German-speaking communities, combined with the isolated geography and sympathetic Peron government, made it the perfect hiding place. The property itself is impressive. A Bavarian-style main house surrounded by outbuildings, all positioned with stunning views of Lake Nahuel Huapi. But what caught investigators' attention wasn't what stood above ground, but what potentially lay beneath it. The unexpected discovery. FBI involvement began when a routine satellite imaging update revealed unusual thermal patterns beneath the property. When cross-referenced with recently declassified OSS, Office of Strategic Services, documents from 1945 to 1947, these anomalies warranted closer inspection. We initially thought we might find documentation, or perhaps Nazi-stolen artifacts, explains Special Agent Robert Hernandez, who led the investigation. What we actually discovered was beyond anything we could have imagined. After obtaining permission from the Argentine government for a joint operation, FBI agents and Argentine federal police began a careful examination of the property. Ground-penetrating radar confirmed what the thermal imaging had suggested. Extensive structures lay beneath the estate. The entrance wasn't found in the main house as expected, but hidden inside a modest groundskeeper's cottage, approximately 300 meters from the main residence. Behind a false wall and a storage closet, investigators discovered a massive steel door bearing an unmistakable symbol: the eagle and swastika of the Third Reich. When we saw that door, with that symbol, we knew we'd found something historically significant, recounts Agent Hernandez. But we had no idea just how significant until we got it open. Entering the abyss, the door itself presented a significant challenge. Designed to withstand both forced entry and explosives, it featured an elaborate locking mechanism that took specialists nearly 2 days to bypass. When finally opened, it revealed a concrete staircase descending steeply into darkness. The engineering was impressive, notes structural engineer Dr. Marcus Freeman, who was brought in to assess the facility. The concrete mixture used contained additives that weren't common until decades later. It was designed to last centuries. The staircase descended nearly 30 meters before opening into a decontamination chamber, typical of high-security bunkers. Beyond this lay a network of tunnels and rooms that left the investigation team in stunned silence. They weren't just looking at a hiding place, they had discovered a fully functional underground command center. The first thing that strikes you is how perfectly preserved everything is, describes Agent Hernandez. It's like walking into a time capsule from 1945. The air is dry, the temperature constant, ideal conditions for preservation. The bunker's main corridor extends over 100 meters, with rooms branching off on either side. Each doorway bears a label in German, identifying spaces dedicated to communications, mapping, living quarters, and more ominously, special projects. The Führer's quarters. The most disturbing discovery came when agents reached a heavily secured section at the far end of the main corridor. Behind another reinforced door lay what appeared to be personal living quarters, more luxurious than the functional spaces in the rest of the bunker. The contrast was immediate, explains Agent Hernandez. While most of the bunker was utilitarian, these rooms featured wooden paneling, artwork, and custom furniture, clearly designed for someone of importance. The suite included a bedroom, private bathroom, office, and small dining area. But what sent chills through the investigation team was what they found on the desk in the office: a leather-bound journal bearing the initials AH, along with several personal items known to have belonged to Adolf Hitler, including a custom Walther PPK pistol and a pocket watch given to him by Mussolini. When we saw those items, there was this moment of stunned silence, recalls Argentine Federal Police Captain Diego Salazar. We were looking at evidence that challenged the established historical narrative about Hitler's fate. Forensic specialists carefully documented and collected these artifacts for analysis. Initial evaluations of the handwriting in the journal appeared to match authenticated samples of Hitler's writing from before his reported suicide. Most shocking of all was the date of the final entry, July 17, 1947, more than 2 years after Hitler was believed to have died in Berlin. The horror laboratory. As disturbing as the living quarters were, they paled in comparison to what agents discovered in the area labeled Sonderforschung, special research. Behind this door lay a fully equipped medical laboratory that immediately evoked the darkest chapters of Nazi history. It was like walking into a nightmare, Agent Hernandez describes. Examination tables with restraints, surgical equipment, specimen containers. Everything you would expect to find in one of the concentration camp medical facilities. Documentation found in locked cabinets revealed the truly horrifying purpose of this facility. The bunker wasn't just designed as a hideout. It was intended as a continuation of the Nazi regime's most disturbing, pseudo-scientific research programs. The documents indicate they were continuing eugenics experiments, explains historian Dr. Ramirez, who was brought in to help translate and contextualize the findings. They were working with local collaborators to abduct individuals from indigenous communities for experimentation. Most disturbing were photographs documenting these experiments, showing that the facility had been operational well into the 1950s. These images were so disturbing that several members of the investigation team required psychological counseling after viewing them. What makes this discovery so horrifying isn't just that these atrocities occurred, notes Dr. Ramirez, but that they continued long after we thought this chapter of history had ended. The Communications Center. Adjacent to the laboratory, investigators found an impressively sophisticated communications center. Despite being built in the mid-1940s, the equipment reflected technology that was advanced for its era. They had radio equipment capable of encrypted communication across continents, explains communications specialist technical agent Sarah Williams. Some of the technology appears experimental, not standard issue for even the German military of that period. Logbooks indicate the facility maintained regular contact with locations in Paraguay, Chile, and surprisingly, Antarctica, until at least 1962. Particularly noteworthy was a dedicated line to a location identified only as Base 211, a code name that has appeared in declassified documents related to alleged Nazi bases in Antarctica. What's significant about this communications setup is that it wasn't just for receiving messages. They were actively transmitting, Agent Williams points out. This wasn't a hiding place for someone trying to disappear. This was a command center for ongoing operations. The map room. Perhaps the most chilling space in the entire complex was what agents have dubbed the map room. This large chamber contains detailed maps covering entire walls, focusing primarily on South America, but also including North America, Europe, and Antarctica. What's disturbing isn't just the maps themselves, but the annotations, explains Agent Hernandez. They had identified key infrastructure, government facilities, and notably, communities with significant Jewish populations. Red pins mark locations across Argentina and neighboring countries, corresponding to a ledger listing names of Nazi officers and collaborators who had escaped to South America. The map suggested a network far more extensive than previously documented by historians. We're looking at evidence of a shadow network that remained operational long after the war, notes Dr. Ramirez. Not just fugitives hiding out, but an organized structure with command hierarchies and apparent objectives. Most alarming was a detailed operational plan dated 1952, outlining what appeared to be preparations for a Fourth Reich that would rise from South America when conditions in Europe were deemed favorable. The document included lists of sympathetic officials in various South American governments and strategies for gradually expanding influence. The Evidence Vault. Beyond the map room, investigators discovered what can only be described as a historical archive, a climate-controlled vault containing thousands of documents, photographs, and artifacts from the Third Reich. The preservation methods were remarkably sophisticated, notes document preservation specialist Dr. Hannah Klein. Temperature and humidity control, acid-free storage containers, even early forms of vacuum sealing. They were clearly intending these materials to survive for generations. The contents of this vault have proven to be of immense historical significance, containing original documents bearing the signatures of top Nazi officials, including Heinrich Himmler, Joseph Goebbels, and Martin Bormann. Many of these documents relate to projects and decisions that historians previously had little information about. Of particular interest are materials related to Die Glock, the bell, a purported Nazi secret weapon that has been the subject of speculation, but with little concrete evidence until now. The documents suggest that research on this device continued in South America after the war. What makes this archive so valuable to historians is that these aren't copies or reproductions, explains Dr. Klein. These are original documents that were clearly removed from Germany before they could be captured by Allied forces or destroyed in the fall of Berlin. The tunnel network. As the investigation expanded, agents discovered that the bunker was just one component of a much larger underground complex. Tunnels extend outward from the main facility, leading to concealed exits up to 2 kilometers from the main entrance. The engineering is remarkable, notes Dr. Freeman. These tunnels include rail systems for moving supplies, independent ventilation shafts, and even an underground water reservoir fed by mountain springs. One tunnel leads to a hidden underground garage containing several vehicles from the 1940s and 50s, including a Mercedes-Benz staff car with features matching those used by high-ranking Nazi officials. Another tunnel connects to what appears to be an emergency escape route, leading to a concealed dock on Lake Nahuel Huapi. The extent of this facility suggests this wasn't built for a single individual, Dr. Freeman explains. This was designed to house dozens of people for extended periods, possibly years, with minimal need to surface. Evidence indicates that the facility remained at least partially operational until the early 1960s, with modernization efforts apparent in some sections. The question that continues to haunt investigators is, who exactly was living here, and what were they planning? The identity question. The most controversial aspect of the discovery involves the evidence suggesting Hitler himself may have spent time in this facility. Beyond the personal items found in the private quarters, investigators discovered medical records that raise disturbing possibilities. We found detailed medical files for a patient referred to only as Patient A, explains forensic pathologist Dr. Sofia Reyes. The records describe treatments for Parkinson's disease symptoms and various gastrointestinal issues, conditions Hitler was known to suffer from. The records span from 1945 to 1963, describing a patient who arrived in poor health but stabilized under the care of doctors identified only by their initials. Of particular note is a reference to plastic surgery procedures performed in 1946, potentially explaining why the patient was never publicly identified. I want to be very clear that we cannot definitively state that Hitler survived and lived here, cautions Agent Hernandez. What we can say is that someone believed to be Hitler was treated in this facility for nearly 2 decades after his supposed death. Investigators have collected DNA samples from various personal items found in the private quarters, hoping to compare them with known Hitler family members. However, with no confirmed Hitler DNA sample for comparison, conclusive identification remains challenging. The global network. Perhaps most concerning for modern security agencies are the indications that this facility was just one node in a global network. Communications logs and planning documents reference other facilities across South America, with particularly strong connections to locations in Paraguay, Chile, and Brazil. We're working with authorities in multiple countries to investigate these associated locations, explains Agent Hernandez. Initial findings suggest at least 3 other facilities of similar scale exist, though none have been as well preserved as this one. The documents also reveal connections to sympathetic groups in the United States, Canada, and several European countries, suggesting a far-reaching network of Nazi sympathizers who remained active well into the Cold War era. What we're seeing is evidence that while the Third Reich collapsed, significant elements of its organizational structure survived, went underground, and continued operating with long-term objectives, notes Dr. Ramirez. They were playing a very long game. Of particular concern are indications that members of this network managed to infiltrate legitimate scientific and governmental organizations in various countries, potentially influencing policy and research directions during the critical early Cold War period. The continuing investigation. The FBI and Argentine authorities continue to process the massive amount of evidence found in the bunker, with experts from multiple fields working to catalog and analyze the materials. This is the kind of discovery that will take years, possibly decades, to fully process, explains Agent Hernandez. The historical implications are enormous, potentially rewriting significant portions of what we thought we knew about the post-war period. Historians are particularly interested in understanding how such an extensive facility could have been constructed and maintained without detection, suggesting levels of local collaboration that exceed previous estimates. What we're finding challenges the narrative that Nazi fugitives in South America were isolated individuals hiding from justice, explains Dr. Ramirez. This facility suggests an organized continuation of Nazi operations with substantial resources and protection. The discovery also raises uncomfortable questions about historical intelligence failures. Documents found in the communications center reference interactions with unnamed American officials in the immediate post-war period, suggesting some level of awareness of this network among certain Allied intelligence personnel. There are indications that Cold War priorities may have led some Western intelligence agencies to turn a blind eye to certain Nazi fugitives, particularly those with technical expertise or intelligence value against the Soviet Union, notes Dr. Ramirez. This discovery may force a re-evaluation of those compromises. The historical significance. Beyond the sensational question of Hitler's fate, historians emphasize that the facility's true significance lies in what it reveals about the broader escape and survival of Nazi ideology and infrastructure after World War II. The unanswered questions. As the investigation continues, many questions remain unanswered. Who exactly occupied this facility? How many similar bunkers remain undiscovered? And perhaps most troublingly, what impact did this shadow network have on global politics in the decades following World War II? We're just beginning to understand the implications, admits Agent Hernandez. Every answer we find leads to 10 new questions. Particularly disturbing are references in the communications logs to sleeper assets placed in various countries, including the United States. Investigators are working to determine whether these references indicate actual infiltration or merely aspirational planning. The most chilling aspect isn't what we know, concludes Dr. Ramirez. It's what we still don't know about how far this network reached, and what influence it may have had on world events during the Cold War and beyond. As historians and investigators continue to analyze the mountain of evidence, one thing becomes increasingly clear. The story of World War II and its aftermath is far from completely told. Beneath the official narratives lie darker truths that are only now coming to light. Buried in secret bunkers and hidden archives across 2 continents. What other Nazi secrets might still be hidden around the world? How many other war criminals escaped justice with the help of this network? And could elements of this organization have survived in some form to the present day? These questions ensure that this discovery will remain at the center of historical research and security investigations for decades to come. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more shocking historical discoveries. Let us know in the comments what you What if history's darkest secrets were hiding in the depths of our oceans? Scattered across the seafloor, forgotten World War II vessels rest as silent witnesses to one of humanity's deadliest conflicts. This is shocking, as deep-sea explorers off the coast of Norway just made a discovery that left them pale with horror. But that's only the beginning. From mysterious disappearances to classified missions, these submerged war machines hold secrets that were never meant to surface. What terrifying truth lurks inside the rusted hull of a submarine that vanished without a trace 80 years ago? Let's dive into the chilling reality of what happens when the forgotten vessels of war finally reveal their cargo. The Vanished Yubot. For decades, naval historians had been puzzled by the mysterious fate of German submarine U-977. Official records showed it had surrendered in Argentina in August 1945, 3 months after Germany's defeat, following an unprecedented underwater journey from Europe. But mounting evidence suggested this wasn't the complete story. U-977's official history never added up, explains maritime historian Dr. Klaus Weber. The crew that surrendered in Argentina was only half the submarine's full complement. Captain Heinz Schäfer claimed the missing men had disembarked in Norway before their Atlantic crossing. But Norwegian records never confirmed this. Something about this submarine's final mission remained classified even 8 decades later. The breakthrough came when an advanced deep-sea mapping project discovered an anomaly off Norway's northern coast. At a depth of 820 feet, sonar revealed a submarine-shaped object partially buried in the seafloor sediment. Initial data suggested it was a Type 6-7 U-boat, exactly like U-977. What made this discovery particularly unusual was the location, notes Norwegian naval commander Lars Johansen. This area had been extensively surveyed after the war. Finding an undiscovered U-boat here after all these years wasn't just surprising, it was impossible unless someone had deliberately concealed its existence. The Norwegian government quickly assembled a specialized deep-sea archaeological team to investigate the wreck before its location could leak to unauthorized salvagers. Led by Professor Astrid Håkonsen of the Norwegian Maritime Museum, the team included technical divers, marine archaeologists, munitions experts, and historical researchers specializing in naval warfare. Our initial assumption was that this might be a previously undocumented German submarine, explains Professor Håkonsen. But we were puzzled by certain inconsistencies in the sonar signature that didn't match standard U-boat designs. The descent. The expedition vessel Havforsker positioned itself above the submarine's location on a cold October morning. Weather conditions were ideal. Calm seas with excellent underwater visibility, rare for these northern waters. The team would need every advantage, as the depth put them at the very limits of technical diving capabilities. Even with modern mixed gas rebreathers, our bottom time would be limited to approximately 25 minutes, explains lead diver Erik Larsen. That meant we needed to be extraordinarily efficient with our documentation process. The 4-person primary dive team began their descent at 6:30 a.m. Each diver carried specialized equipment, high-definition cameras with powerful lights, measuring devices, and sample collection tools. Their primary objective was to identify the submarine and document its condition without disturbing the site. The descent itself was breathtaking, recalls Larsen. As we dropped through the water column, it was like traveling back through time. Modern concerns faded away, replaced by a growing sense that we were approaching something profound, a moment frozen in history. At around 700 feet, the submarine's silhouette became visible, a dark shadow lying at an angle on the seafloor. The vessel was partially buried in silt, with its conning tower and forward section exposed. What immediately struck the team was the submarine's remarkably intact condition. Most shipwrecks at these depths show significant deterioration, explains marine archaeologist Sofia Bergström. This submarine looked almost preserved, with minimal coral growth or obvious structural damage. The cold, low-oxygen environment had essentially suspended the normal decay process. As the team approached, they could clearly see the distinctive profile of a Type 6 IC U-boat, but certain modifications were immediately apparent. The conning tower had been altered, with what appeared to be specialized equipment mounts that weren't standard for this class of submarine. Our first clue that this wasn't a typical patrol submarine came from these modifications, notes Bergström. They suggested a specialized mission profile, possibly something experimental. The divers positioned themselves around the submarine, beginning their methodical documentation process. High-resolution photos were taken of identifying markings, while video captured the overall condition and position. Their first objective: locate the submarine's tactical number to confirm its identity. The identification mystery. As the divers circled the conning tower, they found what they were looking for: faint, but still discernible numbers on the submarine's outer hull. But what they saw made no sense. We expected to find U-977, or perhaps another known U-boat from historical records, says Professor Håkansson. Instead, we found markings indicating this was U-9771, a designation that doesn't exist in any official documentation. According to all historical records, the highest tactical number assigned to a German submarine was U-4710. This discovery immediately transformed the nature of the expedition. They weren't examining a known submarine with a mysterious fate. They were looking at a vessel that, officially, never existed. The implications were staggering, explains naval historian Dr. Weber. This suggested a completely black operation, a mission so secret that the vessel itself was struck from all records. Even 8 decades after the war, nothing was known about its existence. The team's attention turned to accessing the submarine's interior. Most wrecks at this depth would be too dangerous to enter, but the exceptional preservation of this vessel made limited interior exploration possible. The primary point of entry would be the forward hatch, which appeared to be partially open. Safety was our paramount concern, emphasizes Larson. We established strict protocols. Only 2 divers would attempt entry, while the others would maintain positions outside. We would penetrate no more than 10 meters into the submarine, maintaining a continuous guideline to the exit point. Larson and Bergstrom prepared to enter the submarine, while the other team members positioned themselves to provide support and continue external documentation. As the 2 divers approached the hatch, their powerful lights revealed something unexpected. The hatch appeared to have been opened from the inside. This wasn't a case of the hatch being blown open during a catastrophic event, notes Bergstrom. The locking mechanism had been deliberately disengaged from the interior. Someone had tried to get out. The first glimpse. Inside. With extreme caution, Larson and Bergstrom maneuvered through the narrow hatch opening. Their entry disturbed decades of fine silt, temporarily reducing visibility to near zero. They remained motionless, allowing the particles to settle while conserving their precious bottom time. As the water cleared, their lights revealed the submarine's control room. Unlike the exterior, which was remarkably preserved, the interior showed signs of a violent incident. Equipment was damaged, with instrument panels torn from walls and debris scattered across the compartment floor. It looked like either a major structural failure or deliberate sabotage, describes Larson. But there was an odd pattern to the damage. It seemed to radiate outward from a specific point: the entrance to the submarine's cargo hold. What immediately struck both divers was the absence of human remains. A catastrophic event sufficient to cause this level of internal damage would typically result in casualties, yet no bodies were visible in the control room. This contradicted all our expectations, says Bergstrom. If the submarine had suffered a catastrophic event killing all hands, we would expect to find remains at their duty stations. The absence of bodies suggested the crew had abandoned their posts before whatever happened occurred. The divers proceeded cautiously toward the cargo hold entrance. The submarine's interior was designed with watertight compartments, separated by pressure doors. The door to the cargo hold was sealed, but showed signs of extreme stress. The metal around its frame was warped and buckled outward, as if subjected to enormous pressure from the inside. It was like something had tried to force its way out of the cargo hold, recalls Larson, his voice dropping. The damage pattern was unlike anything I'd seen in decades of wreck diving. We're familiar with what happens when the sea crushes a vessel from outside. This was the opposite, something pushing outward with tremendous force. With their bottom time now half expired, the divers had to make a critical decision. Attempting to open the damaged pressure door was potentially dangerous, but represented their only opportunity to discover what the submarine had been carrying. After a brief communication, they decided to proceed. The door's locking wheel was severely damaged, but with their combined effort, they were able to partially rotate it. With a metallic groan that reverberated through the submarine's hull, the pressure seal broke. The door, however, remained jammed in its frame, opening just enough to allow a narrow view into the space beyond. What they saw through that gap would haunt them for the rest of their lives. The horrifying cargo. The cargo hold had been converted into what appeared to be a sophisticated laboratory. Equipment unfamiliar to the divers lined the walls: strange cylindrical containers, control panels with unfamiliar designs, and what looked like medical examination tables fitted with restraints. But it was what occupied the center of the compartment that caused both divers to recoil in horror. A massive glass tank, partially shattered, dominated the space. Within the remains of this container, barely visible through the murky water, was a form that defied explanation. What at first appeared to be a tangle of cables and organic matter gradually resolved into a more terrifying image: a humanoid figure with devastating anatomical abnormalities. It was approximately 2 meters tall, with a basic human form, but with significant, deliberate modifications, Bergstrom would later report, her voice shaking. The cranium was grossly enlarged and asymmetrical. The limbs showed evidence of surgical alteration, with what appeared to be mechanical components integrated into the organic tissue. More disturbing still was the realization that this wasn't a single specimen. As their lights penetrated the murkiness, they discerned at least 3 more similar figures in the corners of the compartment. Unlike the central specimen, these appeared to have broken free from restraints. Their positions, clustered near the pressure door, suggested they had been attempting to escape the compartment when they died. The implications were nightmarish, admits Dr. Weber. The submarine wasn't simply transporting these specimens. It appears they were created or modified on board. This was a mobile laboratory conducting experimental procedures that violated every ethical principle imaginable. With oxygen reserves now reaching critical levels, the divers had no choice but to retreat. They took as many photographs as possible before beginning their ascent, including close-ups of documents that had been sealed in waterproof containers. Documentation that would provide crucial context to their disturbing discovery. The most difficult part was forcing ourselves to think clinically, to document methodically, when every instinct was screaming at us to flee, recalls Larson. Those final moments in the submarine tested our psychological resilience in ways no previous dive ever had. The classified documents back aboard the Havforsker, the team began the painstaking process of analyzing their findings. The photographs of the waterproof document containers revealed their contents to be a combination of research notes, operational orders, and personal journals. Written in German, they required careful translation by Dr. Weber and other specialists. What emerged was a story more disturbing than anyone had anticipated. The submarine, U-9771, was part of a classified program called Project Übermensch. Literally, Project Superman, explains Dr. Weber. It was a collaborative effort between the Kriegsmarine and a specialized division of the Ahnenerbe, the SS's ancestral research society. The program's objective was nothing less than the creation of enhanced human subjects capable of operating in environments lethal to normal humans. According to the documents, the project had been initiated in 1943 as Germany's military position deteriorated. Nazi leadership had become increasingly desperate for wonder weapons that could turn the tide of war. While most of these efforts focused on conventional or rocket technology, Project Übermensch took a more sinister approach: biological enhancement of human subjects. The program selected prisoners from concentration camps, primarily those with scientific or medical backgrounds, continues Dr. Weber, his face grim. They were given a choice: participate in the experiments as researchers or become subjects themselves. Even for those who chose to become researchers, the distinction eventually blurred. As the project progressed, many researchers were themselves subjected to enhancement procedures when volunteer subjects became scarce. The submarine had been specially modified to serve as both a mobile laboratory and a transport vessel. Its mission, launched in early 1945 as Allied forces closed in on Germany, was to deliver both the research team and their successful subjects to a remote facility in Argentina where the work could continue even after Germany's defeat. What makes this particularly chilling is that the submarine's mission wasn't simply about escaping with valuable research, notes Professor Håkansson. They were actively continuing their experiments during the voyage. The submarine wasn't just transporting monsters, it was creating them while underway. The personal journals of the submarine's scientific director, Dr. Heinrich Berger, revealed the fatal miscalculation that doomed the mission. The enhanced subjects had been kept sedated during the initial phase of the journey. But as medication supplies ran low, the effects began to wear off. The subjects, their bodies and minds warped by the procedures they had endured, regained consciousness, and with it, a terrible awareness of what had been done to them. The final journal entry is essentially a death note, says Dr. Weber. Berger describes the subjects breaking free from their restraints and attacking the research team. The submarine's commander ordered the cargo hold sealed, but by then it was too late. The subjects were attempting to break through the pressure doors into the control room. The journal ends mid-sentence. What happened after remains conjecture, but the physical evidence suggests a desperate scenario. The crew likely scuttled the submarine, choosing to sink rather than face what was breaking through from the cargo hold. The damage patterns inside the vessel support this theory. The violence concentrated around the cargo hold entrance, with the crew seemingly abandoning their stations in the final moments. The ethical dilemma. The discovery presented Norwegian authorities with an unprecedented ethical dilemma. The submarine contained evidence of war crimes, potentially valuable historical information, and human remains that had been horrifically desecrated. Each aspect demanded different, often conflicting responses. Our first responsibility was to treat this site with appropriate reverence, explains Professor Håkansson. Despite the grotesque nature of what was done to them, the modified subjects were victims of atrocity. Their remains deserved dignified treatment. At the same time, the site represented a potential biohazard. The documents indicated the experimental procedures had included introducing non-human genetic material and synthetic compounds into the subjects. After 8 decades underwater, the risk was likely minimal, but could not be dismissed entirely. We consulted with experts in biological safety, historical preservation, and ethics, notes Commander Johansson. The consensus was that limited artifact recovery for documentation purposes was appropriate, but that the submarine itself should remain undisturbed as a gravesite. A second, more specialized expedition was organized. Using remotely operated vehicles, ROVs, equipped with precision manipulation tools, the team carefully retrieved key documents and small artifacts that could be safely decontaminated. These items were transported to a secure research facility for analysis under strict quarantine protocols. The human remains, both the modified subjects and crew members found in other compartments during the second exploration, were left in place. The submarine's exact location remains classified to prevent unauthorized disturbance. The broader implications. As analysis of the recovered materials progressed, historians began to understand how this submarine connected to broader patterns of Nazi scientific atrocities. Project Übermensch appeared to be linked to several known programs, including experiments conducted at Dachau and Ravensbrück concentration camps. What we're seeing is evidence of a more extensive and organized effort than previously documented, explains Dr. Elise Cohen, a historian specializing in Nazi scientific crimes. The conventional understanding has been that most Nazi human experimentation was pseudo-scientific, driven more by sadism than legitimate research methodology. While still profoundly unethical, the documentation from U-9771 suggests a more structured, systematic approach with specific military objectives. The submarine's mission also illuminates a little understood aspect of the immediate post-war period: the race by Allied powers to capture Nazi scientific personnel and research. Operation Paperclip, the American program to recruit German scientists, is well documented. But the U-9771 discovery suggests parallel efforts by the Germans themselves to preserve their research and personnel outside Europe. The submarine was clearly heading to a pre-arranged facility in South America, notes Dr. Weber. This aligns with what we know about rat lines, escape routes used by Nazi officials after the war. But it reveals a more organized effort to continue specific research programs, not just help individuals escape justice. Perhaps most disturbing are the connections to modern scientific capabilities. Some of the genetic modification approaches described in the recovered documents conceptually resemble techniques that only became practical in the 21st century. There's an uncomfortable parallel to contemporary genetic engineering, observes Dr. Cohen. While the Nazi researchers lacked the sophisticated tools we have today, they were asking some of the same fundamental questions about human enhancement. Their methods were brutal and unscientific, but they were probing the boundaries of what defines humanity. The ongoing investigation. The full analysis of materials recovered from U-9771 is expected to take years. An international consortium of historians, ethicists, and scientists has been assembled to process the information and place it in appropriate historical context. Our primary responsibility is to the victims, emphasizes Professor Håkansson. Everything we do must honor their memory and ensure that the atrocities committed are properly documented. This isn't about sensationalizing Nazi mad science. It's about completing our understanding of how these crimes against humanity were perpetrated. For the divers who first encountered the submarine's horrific cargo, the experience has left lasting psychological impacts. All four have received ongoing counseling to help process what they witnessed. There's a profound difference between intellectually knowing that these atrocities occurred and coming face to face with the physical evidence, reflects Larson. We've all dived on war graves before, but nothing prepares you for encountering victims of human experimentation, preserved as they were in their final moments of agony. The Norwegian government has declared the wreck site a war grave, making it illegal to disturb without explicit authorization. A memorial service was held aboard the Havforsker before the expedition concluded, honoring both the victims of experimentation and the submarine crew who perished with them. In the end, this is a story of human tragedy on multiple levels, concludes Professor Håkansson. The prisoners subjected to inhuman experiments, the researchers who lost their own humanity in conducting them, and the submarine crew caught in the middle of something that spiraled beyond their control. They all became victims of an ideology that placed supposed scientific progress above human dignity. The echoes in the deep. The discovery of U-9771 reminds us that the ocean floor remains one of the last great repositories of hidden history on our planet. Thousands of shipwrecks from World War II still lie undiscovered, each potentially holding pieces of a historical puzzle that remains incomplete. What makes this discovery particularly significant is how it challenges our understanding of what we thought was a thoroughly documented historical period, notes Dr. Weber. If something as substantial as a secret Nazi biological research program could remain hidden for 8 decades, what else might still be waiting to be found? For maritime archaeologists, the technical challenges of exploring such deep-water sites have long limited our ability to discover these hidden chapters of history. But as technology advances, our capacity to reach these depths is expanding. We're entering a new era of deep-water archaeology, explains Professor Håkansson. ROVs and advanced diving equipment are making it possible to systematically explore wrecks that were previously inaccessible. Each discovery has the potential to dramatically reshape our understanding of the past. The U-9771 finding also highlights the ongoing ethical questions surrounding war graves and historical artifacts. While the scientific and historical value of such discoveries is immense, they must be balanced against reverence for the dead and respect for the sites as places of tragedy. These wrecks aren't just time capsules or archaeological sites, emphasizes Commander Johansson. They're the final resting places of human beings who died in terrible circumstances. Our approach must always balance the pursuit of knowledge with appropriate dignity for the dead. As technology continues to advance, more such discoveries are inevitable. Hidden in the abyssal darkness lie answers to historical questions we haven't even thought to ask, and perhaps some answers humanity isn't prepared to face. What other terrible secrets might be hiding in the thousands of undiscovered wrecks scattered across the world's ocean floors? What other classified missions and experimental technologies lie waiting in the darkness? And how might these discoveries change our understanding of history's darkest chapter? The sea keeps its secrets well, but not forever. As we continue to illuminate the ocean depths, we must be prepared for more moments when divers stare in horror at discoveries that challenge our understanding of history and humanity itself. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more shocking historical discoveries. Let us know in the comments what you think about this incredible find, and what other underwater mysteries you'd like us to explore in future videos.